Thanks one last time for you all being here. Happy to see you all together. My name is Nicholas. I am from Canopy, the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, and this is a worthwhile webinar open to all, hoping to help anyone and everyone who wants a little assistance as we look at some authenticity here in the new year. I know you probably have heard Happy New Year enough times already, and I think we are 2 weeks away from that new year. I'm not sure if I can get away with saying Happy New Year at this point, but I'll try it one last time. Happy New Year to all of you. I hope that you are looking forward to some positive growth here in 2026. 2026 has got to be an improvement. I am certainly looking forward to an uptick in positivity. And part of that is going to include embracing some authenticity. When we talk about embracing authenticity, you're talking about living as your true self for greater well-being, connection, and purpose. You maybe have that little voice inside you that sometimes pops up, tells you maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. And, sometimes we listen to it and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we ignore that voice even when it seems to be shouting from the back of our mind. And yet we might burn some extra brain power pushing down that voice. I've been an improviser for a long time, so when you hear that yes and tone coming from me, we're going to apply it to this authenticity and that authentic voice that might be popping up inside you. You're going to burn less brain power, at least listening to the voice that's inside you, listening to that tiny voice guiding you toward a maybe yes, maybe no. At least acknowledge that it's there. I'm not saying that you have to let everybody else know what that little voice is encouraging you to do. I'm not saying that you have to admit to other people when you are doing your best to ignore your better instincts, but note it for yourself. Part of this authenticity is going to be that self-awareness and that self-honesty. Recognizing in yourself, yep, maybe next time I'll do things a little bit differently. Maybe next time I will listen to that voice. Maybe next time I'll be more in alignment with my own goals, my own values. And when we are in alignment with our own values, we feel a greater sense of integrity. Authenticity matters. Authenticity supports your confidence. Again, there's that integrity, your sense of alignment, and your personal fulfillment. Now, we talk about that confidence. Confidence comes from competence. And competence comes from a chance to utilize your better judgment over and over again, maybe making some of the same choices, maybe making some of the same viewpoints, perspectives. And when we can count on ourselves, even in trying moments, count on ourselves to stick to our own values, our confidence goes up as our integrity goes up. Now, you probably have some lines that you won't cross, some things within you, some values, some goals. Maybe it comes from the outside. Maybe it comes from an education that you were brought up in. Maybe it's something that you've discovered later in life. Maybe you know yourself well enough at this point to be able to say, I know if I go down that path, I feel worse about myself. And I go down this path, even if things don't turn out the way I hope, I still feel good that I stuck to my own values. Those lines that you won't cross, those things that you won't do or things that you will do every single time, they build our core values. Some of us say, I will never shout at work. And when we can stick to that, well, we feel in greater alignment with our own values, our own integrity goes up. When we feel ourselves walking away from an interaction saying, I said I wasn't going to go there, and then they pushed me. I said I wasn't going to bring that up, and then they really ground my gears. When we have to justify our own actions, when we are arguing to ourselves, defending to ourselves, explaining to ourselves our own actions, chances are we maybe have tread upon our own values, crossed a line that we said we weren't going to cross. So if you find yourself walking away from a situation, a conversation, and you are doing your best to justify, rationalize your own actions, the things you just said, the things you just did, chances are you're working that hard to feel okay or make yourself feel okay with the way you just behaved. It is possible that you have stepped on your own values. It's possible we're feeling a little less than aligned with our own integrity. But flip it over, and you know that when you stick to your values, when you don't bend on that core value, when you can stay within your own integrity, you don't have to argue, defend, explain, justify your own behavior as you are walking away, because that was just you staying true to you. And that's part of that authenticity. Now, that's where that personal fulfillment can come from, where we can say, even though that conversation didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to, I didn't get mad because I swore I wasn't going to. Or I didn't raise my voice because I've always said that I wasn't going to go that far. When we can stay within our own integrity, sometimes it is a lot of temptation to cross that line. Sometimes there is somebody across from us who does not share the same values, somebody who has a totally different sense of integrity, and they are pushing buttons. Sometimes we feel like we are rising to the bait or trying to resist the temptation to rise to that bait. When we can stay within our own values, we feel that greater sense of integrity, and that's where that personal fulfillment comes from. We can say, even though it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, I stayed within my own parameters. I can look myself in the mirror and say, you know what? I still feel all right, even though I didn't get the outcome I was hoping for. Now, acting in ways consistent with your values, but also your needs, your preferences, and your identity. Sometimes we know we need a break. Sometimes we know we need a day off, a night off. Sometimes we know that rather than saying, yes, sure, put me on that team, put me on that project, put me on that distribution list. Sometimes we know that we need to say, actually, I am already spread so thin that I am not going to be the active participant that you are hoping me to be on this one more project, this one more task, this one more distribution list. Take me off that chain, take me off that thread. When we can respond to our own needs, and sometimes it feels like we are sticking up for our own needs, we start to feel that authenticity going up. It can be difficult sometimes because sometimes we do want to placate. Sometimes we do want to be agreeable. And sometimes that does lead us to feeling overwhelmed, saying yes when we really need to be saying next time. Now, our actions reflect our awareness and dedication to alignment with our own integrity. When we feel ourselves saying, yeah, sure, put me on that team. Yeah, sure, I'll be the one who brings snack next time to the soccer team. Sometimes we are saying, even though we are exhausted, that we will still spread ourselves even thinner. And that can lead us to look in the mirror at the end of the day going, why? Why did I say yes when I knew I needed a break? Other people seemed that they could say no this time. Why was I the one that said yes this time? Sometimes it has to do with where we put ourselves on our own priority list. Sometimes we are putting everybody else first, it seems. Sometimes we're really good at attending to the needs of others, and we keep pushing ourselves down our own priority list. Well, not to sound like a shampoo ad or a makeup commercial, but we got to raise ourselves up our own priority list because we're worth it. Now, this also includes self-acknowledgement when we are not acting in alignment with our integrity. Now, some of us try to stay away from that self-look, that inward look, that self-reflection. Sometimes we don't want to dwell at all in that emotional zone. Sometimes we fear that if we were to admit to ourselves when we have stepped upon our own integrity, somehow it would be revealed to others that we were flexible on our values. That is not the case. There is value in acknowledging to yourself, all right, I said yes when I should have been saying I need a break. And if I can look in the mirror and be honest with myself about that this time, then next time, I'm going to have greater confidence in myself to be able to say, you know what? I recognize this feeling. I recognize this feeling of being spread too thin and being overwhelmed. So you know what? I'm going to say next time. Next time. I'm not going to spread myself so thin. But that comes from acknowledging, at least to yourself, at least internally. You don't have to let other people know. It can be between you and your journal, you and the mirror. It can be between you and a life coach, you and a counselor, or just you and you admitting to yourself, yep, I definitely stepped on my own values that time, and I don't want to do that again. So some key benefits of authentic living. One, there's that higher self-esteem. Now, higher self-esteem, meaning we are feeling good from the inside out. We are not waiting for other people to tell us that we are doing a good job, looking fine today. We can feel it from the inside out. We build that energy from the inside. And that gives us that greater life satisfaction. We have improved mental health when we are not warring inside ourselves, trying to say yes, even though we need a break, trying to justify our own actions when we have to step on our own values. You're going to have improved mental health when you are relying upon yourself and summoning that confidence from within. Now, confidence can come from predictability and reliability. Here's how I always remember it. Consistency leads to predictability. Predictability leads to reliability, and reliability leads to trust. So if I am consistently acting in accordance with my own values, then I am feeling more authentic. If I can do it consistently, then I can start to predict that no matter what the situation is, I am going to repeat the same type of valuing my values and not treading upon my integrity. Then I can start to rely upon myself, that even in the face of difficult days, difficult conversations, and stressful moments, I know I've got a track record of being able to count on myself and be there for myself. It means I can rely upon myself and I can start to trust. When I can trust myself in difficult situations, I no longer rely upon the approval of others because I know my confidence comes from within. And when I can trust myself, it makes it easier for others to trust me as well. That's going to build stronger relationships, especially with that consistency, predictability, reliability. Other people are going to see this person is true blue. They are definitely strong in their values, and I can count on them to be that person every time. Not a flip-flopper, not a waffler. This is somebody who knows what they stand for, knows what they believe in, and has no problem sticking to those values. Now, the cost of that self-denial, when we try to tell ourselves, I'm going to say yes, even though I need to say I'll do it next time, we feel that stress and that inner conflict. And sometimes at the end of the day, when we have lowered ourselves on the priority list, when we look in the mirror, we are less than patient with ourselves. We are less than forgiving with ourselves. We have put out so much care, concern, and compassion for everybody else that we have little compassion left for ourselves. And that's when we're looking in the mirror, saying some things like, I should have done different. I should have felt different. Those shouldas are going to tear down at that self-esteem, tear down at that self-confidence. So in an effort to retain some of that compassion, we've got to raise ourselves up our priority list. It can also lead to, unfortunately, that self-denial leads to burnout. That's that emotional exhaustion of why do I keep on caring? Why do I keep putting forth more and more emotional energy when I know I need to reserve some of that compassion for the person in the mirror? Sometimes when we lose sight of our values, our identity, our needs, sometimes we have that identity confusion. We look in the mirror and we say, if I am not living for my needs, if I am not serving my own self and mental health and wellness, then who am I serving? Sometimes we look in the mirror and wonder, where am I on this priority list? Have I even put myself on the list at all? And that's going to have reduced relationship quality because sometimes then we end up just hustling around trying to placate others, trying to say yes, even though we're exhausted. And we start to lose that consistency, lose that through line, lose that confident thread. That's going to hurt our relationships because sometimes other people can't trust us because they can't predict what we'll do. They can't rely upon what we'll do because there's no consistency to what we are doing and the choices we are making because it's not rooted in a core value. Why does self-denial happen? People pleasing, doing what we can to put a smile on everybody's face. Again, trying to reap the rewards of some external validation. Sometimes it's a fear of judgment. Sometimes we fear that if we were to stand true to our own values and integrity, somebody might judge those feelings. Somebody might judge those values. And that can lead us to feeling not great. So we fear the judgment that we think might happen. And in an effort to avoid that, we start to waffle, we start to flip-flop, we start to say what needs to be said to avoid that judgment. But that doesn't make us feel great inside. Sometimes we have cultural or workplace expectations that are slightly in disalignment or unalignment with our own values. We know that we have our own needs, our own preferences, our own identity, and sometimes it doesn't line up exactly with workplace culture or cultural expectations. And sometimes here we are trying to start some new habits here at the start of the new year. Sometimes we are falling back on old habits. Sometimes we know I am trying to live more authentically. I am trying to be more self-aware of my own core values and what feeds me. But the brain doesn't love change. It takes some time to build some new habits. And on an exhausted day when we have lowered ourselves on the priority list, it can be tricky to stick to these new habits, these new goals. But we will feel better when we start to feel that progress toward new habits, new goals, or maybe just sticking with our own needs, preferences, and identity. Authenticity is going to help our mental health. It's going to reduce anxiety because we are no longer focused into the future, worried about what people might say, that fear of judgment, that fear of negative feedback, that fear of ripping down my self-esteem. Instead, we know that comes from inside, that self-confidence and that consistent living within my own integrity, living for my own values. That's going to make us rely upon ourselves in the present moment rather than worrying into the future, which is where anxiety lives, worrying into the future about how other people might react to choices we haven't even made yet. It's going to lower our emotional suppression. Now, that's a little bit what I was talking about at the very beginning when we were talking about that little voice that pops up. Sometimes that is an emotional reaction. 90 to 95% of our decisions are fueled by emotional information. I'm going to say that again. 90 to 95% of our decision making is emotionally fueled. So when we are trying to deny the emotion that is bubbling up, sometimes that's an instinct, a gut reaction. Sometimes we can't even explain it. Or sometimes we are just reluctant to admit, yep, I'm feeling a little bit guilty. I'm feeling a little bit fearful. I'm feeling a little bit shameful. Those are uncomfortable emotions. And sometimes when it comes to those uncomfortable emotions, we are reluctant to admit that we are experiencing them, but that can lead us to confusion and anxiety. So now here I am trying to focus on the present moment, but I am awash with confusion and anxiety because I am not listening to, responding to, acknowledging the emotion that has given me a signal of importance. Authenticity and mental health increases resilience and clarity. Resiliency is a learned skill and it is developable over time. When I can stick to my core values, what my needs are, my preferences, keep myself pretty high on that priority list, that's going to boost my resiliency. And when it comes to decision making, I just have to rely upon what I have built up as my integrity and make decisions within that integrity. Again, consistency leads to predictability, which leads to reliability, which leads to trust. I can trust myself, and that's going to add clarity to my decision making because I'm just going to rely upon my values and integrity to guide me forward. Authenticity and relationships, again, it's going to promote that trust. People are going to be able to count on you to be you and not count on whatever is being said to guide you in that moment. Instead, they can count on you to be you, and you can look across them and say, you can count on me to be myself. It's going to deepen communication because I'm no longer going to say to you what I think you want to hear to try and stave off that judgment. I'm going to tell you what resonates with me. And when I can look you in the eye and tell you this is why, this is what it means to me, this is why it's important to me, and that person's going to be able to look back to you and say, I believe you. I can tell that you're not just giving me a line. You're not shining me on. You're not just telling me what I want to hear. I can tell that this is reverberating right down to your core. And that's going to create that meaningful connection because somebody's going to look back to you and say, wow, I respect that bravery and that courage of not dodging the question, of not giving me a half answer, of not just telling me what I want to hear or kicking the can down the road, I'm going to be able to look across the table and be like, all right, this is somebody who I want to come back to with another question in another moment. This is somebody whose advice I might seek out because they have that clarity of thought, that clarity of decision making because of your own connection to what's important to you. And we talk about authenticity at work. Again, it's going to support that confidence. Again, because we're going to have that consistent relying upon what is important to you. That's going to guide you in decision making, guide you in conversation. That's going to guide you in some of your planning. It's going to guide you in some of your priority setting. It's going to strengthen your leadership presence with that clarity of voice, clarity of thought. And again, people can look across the table, look you in the eye, and tell that you mean it. You are not just saying what needs to be said in the moment. You are responding authentically to the information that was given to you. And as you are given more information, you're just going to rely upon that same integrity, and that's going to guide you through. That sounds like a leader. Clear vision, clear voice, full heart. Talk about fostering creativity and engagement. Again, if I am responding to my gut instinct, if I'm responding to my emotional information, if I'm not afraid to acknowledge that that's there, then I can look across at somebody and say, with that particular idea, something seems off. If I'm 100% honest, I'm almost there, but there's something in me that's making me think maybe we could do better. There's something inside me saying, something about this doesn't feel completely authentic. That's going to guide you in your creative thought because it's going to be responding to some of that amazing decision-making information that comes from your emotional life that sometimes is helping us see clearly even before we can rationally understand. And we talk about that engagement. Of course, if I am not just telling you what you need to hear, or I'm not just telling you what I think you want to hear, if I am responding honestly, if I'm responding authentically, if I am backing it up with my own values, then yeah, it's easier for me to care about what I care about and not have to spread myself too thin and say yes because I think that's what you want to hear. Instead, I'm going to be able to answer with that authenticity, and you're going to see it in my eyes, you're going to hear it in my voice, and believe it or not, that's going to encourage other people to venture forth their own creative thoughts. It's going to help them be a little bit more, dare I say it, vulnerable and transparent with you. We're going to build that connection. We're going to admit that, you know what, I suddenly care about this project more because I can see in the eyes of the others that you all care about this too. So let's lean into our personal passions rather than just distracting ourselves with too many screens, constantly having our earbuds in. Let's think about what is that feeds us? What is it that feeds our own, I'm going to say it, soul? What's going to feed our own passion? What did we like to do when we were younger and didn't care about the judgment of others? If we are truly honest with ourselves, that which refills our tank of compassion, passion's right there in the word. It's going to revive your energy because you've heard before, find something that you love and try to get paid doing it. When we are doing something we love, it hardly feels like work. You're energized by the moment-to-moment gratification of just pursuing that which feeds us. It's going to enhance our purpose because we know we care about it. Everything resonates with that passion. We can feel our core values lighten up as we lean into what is a priority for us. Our personal passions are usually pretty high on our priority list. So if we are looking for ways to raise ourselves up our own priority list, let's start with that activity. What is that passion of yours? Let's get it back on the calendar because it's going to boost your mood and motivation. We talk about the shoulds that sometimes plague our conversation in the mirror at the end of the day. When we are motivated by what we want, by our passions, suddenly this is why we're getting better with time management, attention management, stress management. I want to be able to put my have-tos in a box and be done with them for the week so that I can refocus onto my connections, onto my personal passions, onto those things which feed me, that want is going to pull me forward in a way that a should pushing me in the back just won't last. Passions and well-being, we get into that flow state where intention becomes action. That's going to improve our emotional regulation. When we know that every pull of the paddle is rewarding us, then we are going to feel our stress level go down because we know we are doing something healthy for ourselves, for our brain, and sometimes for our body. Hobbies reduce stress and depressive symptoms. It's also good for burnout, especially if your hobby has an end point. If you can tie a bow on it, slide it to the end of your workbench and say, for all the trouble I had this week, I completed this. This thing which I love to do, I got to the end of this particular step of this project. I can hold it up and say, I did this. That's going to help us with those feelings of burnout, because a feeling of accomplishment is a great antidote to burnout. And believe it or not, when we have greater purpose in our life, we can extend our lifespan by sometimes as much as 7 years. That's on average. That's what the science says. So when we can tap into our personal passion, we are actually adding years to our life. So consider, what is that thing? What is that activity? What is that hobby? What is that personal passion on your priority list that you can bring back to the schedule? Consider, is it learning an instrument? Maybe it's volunteering, putting the focus on other people solely. Maybe it's creative writing and just getting some of those thoughts out onto paper so that you're not dragging them around. Sometimes it's outdoor activities. I myself am over 6 feet tall, so every once in a while, I just need to go stand in the forest and be around things that are bigger than me. So consider one of these. If you are questioning where your passions might lie, try one of these activities. See if you don't tap into a personal passion. See if that isn't something that you want to repeat, something that all of a sudden you are making time for. Now we're finding ways to avoid some of our, we're finding ways to avoid some of our stressors so that we can spend more time with our passion projects. Martha, thank you for the highlighting there. Building a more authentic year. Let's clarify our core values. Remind yourself of what's important to yourself. Remind yourself of that which you will not bend, and return to them with confidence. When we stand in alignment with our core values, and we can do so consistently, we'll start to rely upon ourselves and trust ourselves. And notice those moments of self-betrayal. Be honest with yourself. You don't have to let it out. You can just be honest with yourself and the person in the mirror. Oh boy, yeah, I definitely tread upon my own values there for just a second. I'd be better served if I could stay within my own integrity. And practice the honest communication about your preferences, about your needs, and be honest with yourself in the mirror. You don't have to let other people know, but do be honest with yourself. So say one honest preference per day. Schedule some passion time. If you don't have some time on your calendar already, go ahead and put it on your calendar now and reflect on your alignment choices. Sometimes when you felt like you were in alignment, and be honest with those times when you felt like you were not in alignment. See if you can recreate the environment and circumstances where you can be more honest with yourself. So authenticity equals that connection, some clarity of thought, and sustainable well-being. That sustainable well-being involves those personal passions, tapping into that which feeds you. And with that, I'll open it up to questions here for just about a minute. We are right here at our 10:30 time. So if you need to go, I totally understand, and I'm happy that you were here. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope that you can find some greater authenticity as you move forward. And if you've got a question about the content, go ahead and pop it into the chat. I'll be more than happy to offer some clarification. And don't forget, if you have an EAP, consider reaching out to them. I happen to work for Canopy, the EAP. And if you want to reach out to us, it's 1-800-433-2320. Send us an email if you'd rather type it out than talk it out, info@canopywell.com. Or go ahead and research some of our resources at my.canopywell.com. Reach out to us or reach out to your EAP. They oftentimes have a coach that you can talk to. that can be helpful with your authenticity. Hit me with your questions. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time and attention. I'm going to stop the recording